Camping is an extremely popular activity all across the world, and as time goes on, camping just seems to get more and more popular. But there's a lot more to it than just sleeping on the ground and drinking beer. So in this video, I'll be going through everything that you need to know about camping and some of the most important aspects. Anyway, that's enough waffle, let's get straight into it, starting off with accommodation. Now, as with any hobby, you can either do it expensively or do it dirt cheap. And when it comes to camping, that's absolutely no different. Now, the most expensive way would have to be with a camper van or caravan, easily costing into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. Now, yes, you can get a cheap caravan and rent a camper van, but it's still going to be the most expensive way anyway. Now, the benefits of having a camper van / caravan include having your own toilet, sometimes your own shower, and your own comfortable bed away from the elements and off the ground. But camper vans are horrible to drive, and if you have a caravan, you'll make more enemies on the way to the campsite by clogging up all the roads and sticking to 20 k's under the speed limit the whole way there. Then you'll make friends in your entire lifetime. So personally, I wouldn't recommend it. Now, the best of both worlds would probably be a camper trailer, but they're not cheap either. Now, a trend I'm seeing more and more these days, which is cheaper than a camper trailer, has to be the rooftop tent. Now, the rooftop tent is a great invention. However, it does have some drawbacks. It absolutely ruins your fuel economy, and when you're 10 beers deep, as most people are at all times on a camping trip, it's very hard to get up and down from the roof of the vehicle. So of course, the next option would have to be the tent. Now, if you've been camping, you should know that the golden rule is to always set up your sleeping arrangements before you start drinking, and preferably when the sun is still up. Now, on my most recent camping trip, I made the fatal mistake of pulling up to the campsite, whipping out the foldable chair, and going hog wild on the Carlton drafts. And about 8 beers later, the sun had gone down, and I still had to set up my tent. So about an hour and 2 more beers later, I finally had my tent set up on a 45-degree angle, and I slept like a baby for about 20 minutes at a time until I had to shuffle my mattress back up to the top of the tent as it kept sliding down. Now, there is a solution to this conundrum. You can either get a swag, which is much easier and much more simple to put up, or of course you can check in at the 1,000-star hotel. Now, what's the 1,000-star hotel? That just means lying out in the open. The 1,000-star hotel is an optional mattress experience, and while a 5-star hotel is usually pretty expensive, a 1,000-star hotel is extremely cheap, often costing nothing. Anyway, that's your accommodation options when you're out camping. But before we move on to our next topic, I'm trying to hit 200,000 subscribers on this channel this year, so if you could help a brother out and press the subscribe button, it really helps me out, and it's free. I mean, just look how many of you guys watch these videos and aren't subscribed. Anyway, moving on to the next most important part, and that of course is the essential items you'll need to bring with you. Now, the first 2 items on this list I'd recommend would be toilet paper and hand sanitizer, and that of course is for the bush poo. Now, if you haven't done a bush poo, you haven't really been camping. And of course, you can either use a leaf or your finger and suck it off like chocolate on Easter morning, or just let it dry and crust off on its own, but these 2 items are relatively cheap and can come in pretty handy. Now, the bush poo is the ancient Australian tradition of cutting fudge in the middle of the bush, because, well, unless you get a camper van, most of the time there isn't a toilet available. And if you manage to find a campsite that does have a toilet, most of the time it isn't exactly clean. But there's multiple variants to the bush poo, and one of my favorites has to be the aqua nugget. The aqua nugget is the art of going down to a water source, dipping in the rear end, and dropping anchor. You're also feeding the native fish, and there's minimal cleanup, meaning that you're getting 2 birds stoned at once. Now, theoretically, you can hang a bush poo literally anywhere, even if it's not in the bush, but I wouldn't really recommend it. But as they say, better out than in. Now, the next most important thing on my list would have to be the esky. Now, this of course is a cooled storage unit for food and most importantly beer. Now, you can spend a lot of money or a little bit of money on an esky, but I reckon the perfect esky has to be the motorized esky. Now, this thing is an absolute feat of engineering. It's an all-terrain vehicle that comes with a wheelie bar and has enough storage in the esky compartment to store everything that you'll ever need on a camping trip. Now, at the moment, I can't personally justify spending $900 on this motorized esky, but if you guys like and subscribe, maybe one day YouTube will pay me enough to make this purchase worthwhile. Now, the next most important part of any camping trip has to be the campfire. See, the problem with camping is that most of the time there's absolutely nothing to do. You just end up spending hours sitting around doing nothing. And of course, when the sun goes down, it can get pretty damn cold. And the campfire is of course a solution to both boredom and the cold. Now, ever since the dawn of time, humans have been lighting fires. And in this modern day and age, one of the most popular places to light a fire is of course a tobacco store. But the campsite still has to be a close second. Now there are a few ways to start a campfire. You can rub 2 sticks together like a caveman, or since it's the 21st century, you can just splash a little bit of petrol out of the motorized esky on some wood and light it with a lighter.
I think it must be damp.
Now once the fire's started, you've got to keep it going somehow, and for that you'll need firewood. Now most people wouldn't bring their own firewood, so the best way is usually just to find it on the ground or snap it off an old dead tree. You don't only have to use firewood to keep the fire going. You can also use anything that one of your friends brought along, like a camp chair, clothing, toilet paper, a bit of hand sanitizer, and of course if you've been drinking enough, your own urine might have enough alcohol percentage to keep it going as well. Anyway, that's enough about campsite arson. Now it's time to get into the next most important part of a camping trip, and that of course is the camping vehicle. Now I left this to this part of the video because you don't really need a vehicle to go camping, however it does make things a lot easier. You can literally spend 500 grand or 500 bucks on one of these vehicles, but I'll keep it short and sharp. Now at the top of the range you got your classics like the 70 series Land Cruisers and the $100,000 cars that'll go probably every place that you can get a $5,000 GQ Patrol. People literally spend hundreds and thousands of dollars on vehicles they kit out for camping and take once or twice a year. Now if you're doing a lap of Australia or something and living out of these vehicles, I can sort of justify the price. I mean, you're not living in a house. The vehicle basically is your house, so I think it's money well spent, technically. But of course, as with anything, there's levels to it. Now I'm not going to bang on about cars like I usually do in these videos, but pretty much any dirt cheap 4-wheel drive with the right suspension and wheels and a dirt cheap swag will get you basically anywhere you can think of without financially bankrupting you. And of course there's always the option of buying an AU Falcon wagon, welding the diff and putting some all-terrain tyres on it, and then you've got a vehicle that will literally go anywhere for 500 bucks. So unless you're a multi-millionaire or planning on living out of it for 2 years, there's no need to financially bankrupt yourself so that you have the coolest off-roading setup in the Chadstone car park. Get something cheap and somewhat reliable, and that way you can smash the fuck out of it, ruin all the paint and not really care at the end of the day. Anyway, moving on. Now the next thing that we're going to talk about is camping activities, and the most popular one of course is drinking beer. Now I've already spoken about eskies, beer and everything to do with this activity, so now let's get into it. There's no better feeling than sitting in a camp chair, looking at a view and drinking beer, or sitting around a campfire and drinking beer. And when it comes to camping, when the sun goes down, there's literally nothing else to do except drink beer. Now some of the best drinking and camping goes on at places like Bathurst and Summer Nats, but of course I'll do my own videos on those two things where I'll go into this a little more deeply. Now I understand that not everyone enjoys alcohol, and that's fair enough, each to their own, but beer and camping just goes together like youth crime and shopping centres. Now another fun camping activity has to be fishing. There's nothing like finding a campsite next to a body of water, whipping out your rod and letting the fish nibble on it. And if you know what you're doing, you can actually catch your dinner. Now me personally, I'm pretty hopeless at fishing. I couldn't catch a cold, but I can see the appeal. However, to be successful when it comes to fishing, you have to be very patient. And me personally, if I haven't caught something within 10 minutes, I just give up and start drinking. But of course, you could always do both together. Now, of course, there are some other activities like bird watching, kayaking or hiking, but they're more camp than a row of tents, so we'll move on. Now the last thing that we'll talk about in this video is of course location, because well, technically you can camp anywhere you want. There's of course the option of urban camping or stealth camping, and I mean urban camping is really just a fancy word for homelessness, but people do go stealth camping and hide in things like roundabouts, bushes, or just other places that you'd never think anyone would be, and they just sleep there. But unless you're homeless, I don't really see the appeal behind it, unless you're trying to get heaps of views on YouTube. Anyway, moving on. Next up, of course, you've got the caravan park, which is basically just an empty grass patch where you pay $40 or so to set up your tent and sleep in a field with a bunch of other people. Now, I guess this is a safer option than camping somewhere like, I don't know, the Belangolo State Forest, but you'll be kept awake all night by people drinking and making noise, and woken up early in the morning by the same thing. Then, of course, there's the campsites, which are usually a little bit more remote than a caravan park. The next option is just camping in the middle of the bush. Now, I'm pretty sure this is called free camping, and sometimes it's legal and sometimes it's not, but sometimes you can be so remote that who's going to tell you off anyway. Now I guess this is the best experience because you sort of have the whole place to yourself, but if you see a guy like this approach you, I wouldn't exactly hang around. Then of course you got those festival camping packages where the tents are better equipped than some people's houses. Now I personally plan to go on a little camping trip of my own in the near future and spend the night at the infamous Belangolo State Forest. So if you want to see that, subscribe to my second channel so that you don't miss it. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, you'll probably enjoy one of these too. I'll see all of you guys in the next one.